How do you see the balance between risk and opportunity when it comes to the world of AI?
I actually see it much more as an opportunity. If you are trying to find relevant content when there are thousands and thousands of pieces of content out there, AI is a brilliant tool for that.
We're joined by Jill Dougan, Group CMO, Informa, which is one of the world's largest events and publishing companies.
I really believe that one of your responsibilities as a leader is to bring people with you and to bring people up with you.
What's your perspective on some of the core marketing trends that somebody needs to be mindful of to be a better marketer?
Number one,
Jill is the first ever global CMO for the organisation, representing more than 1,200 marketers across its portfolio.
as marketers, we have that opportunity to get out and about, to see a different view, and that's what I think it's always kept me going.
How do you balance your time and energy? Jill shares lessons from her career journey, her take on resilience and risk, and why purpose, inclusivity, and human creativity matter more than ever in marketing today. Well, Jill, amazing to have you on the show. Thanks for giving us your time, and also our listeners.
Thank you very much for having me.
No, it really is a pleasure. And so you're relatively new into a massive global group CMO role,
Yes.
right in the heat.
Yes.
So how are you thinking about the world? What's your priorities for the first 12 months or so?
I think, as you point out, so Informa is, a PLC, so we're FTSE 100, but actually we've grown and transformed through acquisition. So we've never had a group CMO before.
Yeah.
So we have lots of divisional CMOs and brand CMOs across the organisation, actually 1,200 marketers, but actually my role hasn't existed. So, and I can get into more about why it is now in place. But actually the first priority for me is just establishing my own credibility in the organisation and frankly proving to the 1,200 marketers that I'm there to actually support, to give them a voice and actually to bring more value than they're currently able to do in their own divisions. We have fantastic marketers across our organisation, so I'm definitely not there to disrupt. I certainly don't want to build a huge, global role at the centre, but actually alongside that credibility, my priority is really about giving our marketers across Informa a voice at the table. One of the things that really appealed to me about the job was that actually it's a group CMO role and it actually sits on the exec-com. There aren't many of those around. If you look at FTSE 100s, there
Certainly
aren't many
not on a global,
marketing.
no, you're
definitely
right.
not on the scale of our organisation. So as I say, it's very much about credibility and establishing the role and my place in the organisation and the value that I'm able to deliver. But actually, alongside my arrival, Informa is going through a 3-year transformation programme. So we're in a very lucky position. As a company, we're doing really well. It's not a sort of a burning platform. But actually, because we've grown through acquisition, through bringing lots of companies on board, we're actually probably not, I suppose, capitalising on the sum of all of our parts. So the 3-year transformation programme, known as One Informa, is all about how we take all of those assets, all of those capabilities, and really take them to the next level and capitalise on all of those.
Wow, 1,200 marketers. That's a lot of
Yes.
herding.
It is
I mean,
a lot.
that must be crazy.
It is crazy. It's crazy, and because we're an events and publishing business, there is just a trading cycle. So one of the things that I've had to learn really quickly, I remember coming in last year, and I was having a conversation with one of our CMOs, and I was like, look, I'd love to come and see you. I'd love to take you through where I'm thinking from a strategy perspective, get your input. This was in July last year, about a month into the role. And she said, that's absolutely fantastic. I can see you in January 2025. I was thinking, what? And of course, because Q4 is her busiest quarter. So there's a rhythm to the business that is really different. And the marketers are so integral to that. So yeah, I'm definitely in learning mode. And as I say, there are some amazing marketers in our organisation, but they don't necessarily catch up with each other or speak to each other. So I'm trying to be that sort of that glue that brings them together and put in some structure around that.
My God, Jill, it sounds fantastic and fascinating at the same time. What a meaty challenge to get into. How does somebody get into a role like this? I mean, how tell us a little bit about how you navigated your career to make this eventual leap into the role that you're in.
Yeah, it's a really it's a good question. I've been very lucky. I've had a very varied career and I've been around for a long time. So there have been some amazing companies. I think if you think about sort of, whether that's, I started off at Lloyds Bank as a grad trainee. I went to work for an agency, Rufus Leonard. Then I went into American Express for 10 years. then into a startup, and then into energy with First Utility and BG. I think, so those all look really different. But actually the sort of the thread that goes through it is that sort of transformation, growth and customer. So that's the sort of the piece that goes throughout my career. And I think what I'm always looking for is that sort of that challenge and that opportunity. I don't stand still, I suppose, and I'm looking for companies that are doing the same, if you like. And I think the reason that I've ended at Informa is because, I know through my career what I like and what really makes me tick. And when I left British Gas after 6.5 years of, really hardcore transformation, what I really wanted, I realised that, number one, I missed global. So I really love working in a global organisation because of the sort of the unique challenges actually that can bring. I wanted to go back into a really high growth company with all of that ambition. But actually the other piece that's really important for me is purpose. And you might look at Informa and think, well, where's the purpose in that? British Gas, all about keeping homes warm and, hot water and working. Informa's an events and publishing company. Actually, we've got a really strong sense of purpose. We are all about, connecting people for opportunity, driving growth. We have some of the most incredible experts in their field. And we talk about some of the innovation that's happened because we've brought people together. So that for me was the real, I suppose, attraction about Informa was that purpose, plus just some brilliant people. Yeah. So I think it connects very nicely to that sort of overall thread, but it just added another challenge or another industry that I was looking for.
Amazing.
I love the fact you're really clear on what makes you tick. I think you global, high growth, purposeful.
Yes.
I guess along the way you'll have made some decisions which might have felt a bit riskier at the time because you've moved.
Yes.
So maybe is there one example where maybe it was a risk at the time, but it turned out to be a big leap, a big accelerant?
Yeah. I think probably the most obvious one is the American Express into Cardlytics. I've been at American Express for 10 years. It is a phenomenal company. If I always talk about, I did a bit of marketing and brand, but I really learned marketing and brand at Amex. And there for 10 years, amazing opportunities along the way, mainly based out of the UK, but had the opportunity to live in UK, Sydney, New York. And actually I was coming back from my second maternity leave and you get the call that everyone dreads to say, basically overnight, my entire business unit was going. And so I was very lucky. I had the opportunity to stay at Amex. But actually I kind of thought, you know what, I've done it for 10 years. Here is my opportunity to go and do something completely different. So I went to join Cardlytics, which I think Amex was 80,000 people when I left it. And Cardlytics was 15 people, 20 people in the UK, and literally could not have been more different. And it was really risky. My husband at that point had decided that he was going to be the main carer at home as well. So we were really, frankly, reliant on my salary as well. And it was a completely different environment. So, I went from all of the comfort, all of the benefits, all of the sort of structure of American Express to turning up on my first day at Cardlytics and really doing everything from, speaking to senior leaders at our client companies to ordering pencils and pens and everything in between. So I loved that experience. I probably learned more about myself in my 3 years at Cardlytics than any other role. Yeah, that was the risky one, but I absolutely loved it. And I still think of the jobs I've had, Cardlytics is probably, from a personal and career perspective, one of the most sort of formative.
Love that.
Yeah, I probably grew more in that role than anywhere else.
Today's program is brought to you by two fantastic organizations. First up is Studio Space, a leading on-demand marketing agency platform. Studio Space gives marketers complete control over their projects, from matching the right agency to your brief, to managing contracts and invoicing, and even tracking all of your spend data all in the one place. They take care of everything and it's totally hassle-free. They even guarantee the work. So check out Studio Space today. Our second sponsor is the Marketing Skills Trust, a charity with a mission to make marketing a better place for everyone. They provide grants to help create a more equitable industry and support initiatives that really do drive diversity, inclusion, and create opportunity. The trust has been instrumental in leveling up the marketing skills across the board. And do take a look at their website for more information. Now, let's get on with the show.
You did say you learned more about yourself than anywhere else. I think you probably mean sort of a different stuff to the global, the growth, the so on. What did you learn?
I think for me, it was learning that, number one, I could really deal with pressure. I mean, working in a sort of startup or scale up is a different level of pressure, not just the hours or the time you have to invest in it, but again, it's a small environment. There is nowhere to hide. And from day one, you're expected to be on, frankly. So I think I learned that I was really resilient. I'm definitely resilient. I think I learned that, I became much more comfortable with risk, as in, I didn't need to have all the detail. I could make decisions with a certain level of risk attached, and I became much more adept or much more comfortable with that. And then just ambiguity. I mean, I think in something like a startup or a scale up, you don't know if it's going to be around in a year, 2 years, 3 years. And I was kind of okay with that. So I think it's the risk, it's the ambiguity, and actually just the resilience, actually. Yeah.
I want to turn back to Informa for a moment here, because like you say, transformation galore. And I think there's two components. One, when I look at the organization as the mother brand, the PLC brand, is not necessarily one that consumers would hear about or know about per se. And yet underneath that, as you say, 1,200 marketers working perhaps at a divisional sort of level across a multitude of different businesses across different industries. And I wonder if you have a perspective on how does that play out as a brand challenge, as in one Informa versus all the very multitude of brands that sit under it across the different geographies and industries. Yeah. How do you view that as the jigsaw puzzle?
It's a really interesting challenge for us as a business. And actually part of the One Informa transformation is around how do we bring the Informa brand more to the fore. And it's really interesting. When I started having the conversation about joining the company, my first reaction was, never heard of it, don't know what it does, it's B2B, And actually the search firm said to me, will you just go and have a look at this organisation? It's incredible. So of course I did, and was blown away by, the growth it had gone through already, the brands that I'd heard of, that actually were under the Informa family. And then, as I say, that ambition and where it was going. And particularly in FTSE 100, again, there are lots of companies that are really struggling. Actually, Informa, I think last year was one of our best years. So from a brand perspective, actually, we've benefited from being a little bit under the covers from an Informa perspective. So, for example, if you are attending World of Concrete or the Monaco Yacht Show, which are two of our brands, you don't need to know that it's Informa. And actually, you've got a really strong affinity to those brands. Yeah. And actually, if you are going to World of Concrete, you're probably not going to the Monaco Yacht Show or to Cannes Lion, for example, which is another one of our brands. So there's a question about why. Why do you need to have that Informa piece? And I think it's a couple of things for me. Number one, we want to recruit and attract the best talent. So I need to know people in the market to know what Informa does. So that's really important to me. And then the second piece is, if you start thinking about customer experience and where people are going and where they're spending their time and money, for me, there's something around, if I'm going to go to one event or two events this year, it's going to be an Informa event, because I know Informa delivers the best customer experience, the best value for money. And because it's Informa, I know the best experts in my field will be there. Wow. So that's the sort of the thread for me. Similar, we own, Taylor & Francis, which is a huge publishing business. Again, it's a really respected brand. And because we're Informa, we can bring all of that investment, all of that capability. So it's a constant dilemma that we have as an organisation. But it's a really interesting challenge. And again, from a shareholder investor perspective, I need people to think of us more than just an events brand, because they need to see the sum of all of our parts, because that, of course, drives into company valuation overall. Do you take any inspiration from the likes of the FMCG world, for example? Very much. Because I know that over the last, decade or so, I mean, Unilever has, as a mother brand, become far more visible, even in all its advertising and how it works. I mean, is there some sort of relationship or sort of parallels to be drawn from that world and how it's benefit to the FMCG companies? Yes, I mean, absolutely. So we talk often Diageo as an example that we use a lot. And actually some of my colleagues around the ExecCom are from that background. Right. So we absolutely have that. And it goes back to that. Again, it's that stamp of quality. It's that sort of, you've got the mothership behind, which enables so much, as I say, the investment, the resource, the power of what that brand can deliver. So yes, although we're B2B, we absolutely use that as an example. I'm so glad you say that, right? Because often the perception is that B2B marketing and B2C marketing is completely different beasts.
Right? It's just such a misnomer.
Yeah.
And yet so many people think on those lines. So it's great to hear that there's absolute cut through crossover and the way that you think about it conceptually.
There is. I mean, there are differences. Don't get me wrong, but so if you think about one of my event attendees, they don't walk into one of my events and suddenly think, oh, I've got my B2B hat on now, I'm no longer a consumer, because they're expecting the same brilliant experience, the same value for money. There are differences. So if you think about how we're trying to market in a B2B world, often you'll have many more stakeholders. So, we're trying to talk to a whole range of audiences, which you may not have that sort of breadth or depth in B2C. And I also think there's risk involved. So if you think about someone who's attending one of our events or someone who's buying one of our, published articles, there's a part of their career is tied up in that. Of course. So there's a risk. You are spending company money. So then you have to demonstrate the value of that. So there's a slightly different risk profile, I think, when people are making those purchasing decisions. But no, I think what people are looking for from B2C to B2B is, there's so many parallels.
Sure. Good marketing is good marketing.
It really is.
So marketing effectiveness, it's not just in the last year, but in the last few, has become a really hot topic. Mm-hmm. And what comes to mind is it must be a nightmare to get oversight of like who's doing what's good. You talked about community to create best practice. So like how do you keep tabs on everything from an effectiveness perspective?
Look, I think it's an area of opportunity for us, and it's definitely a focus for my team. And one of the things I'm thinking about, I don't want to set up massive group functions because I think in a business like ours, it could just slow everything down. However, there are certain roles that I think we need at a group level to bring, to your point, to bring some of that together, to really define what good looks like and how that then translates into actual marketing. So we are an organisation that has, incredible amounts of data. We really do, and we're very lucky in that respect. But how we use that data is, I think, we could do more around standardization, for example, and then defining what good actually looks like. Yeah. So that's definitely an area of focus. So I've brought in someone in my team who's very focused on marketing performance and effectiveness. And not just around creating dashboards, but as I say, what does best practice look like? How does that translate? And how do we sort of give our marketers the tools and capabilities to measure and benchmark and actually change behaviour then as a result? Love
that, because why that came to mind was Diageo, I think it's called Catalyst, and L'Oreal and the like have these enormous, expansive marketing practices, and to find the blueprint, find the playbook, and then the other thing I'm just trying to think about, because I'm so far out. We do these sort of mucking about type careers, but in the heat of it, I'm remembering back, like how do you balance your time and energy in the heat of all of this?
It's a good question, and one I'm still working through, I think.
Are you saying there's no balance, Jill?
No, I'm not saying there's no balance, but I do like the weeks when I'm like, oh, good, I've got 7 hours on a plane. Excellent. I'm like, okay, there's something wrong here when I'm like, because I'm thinking, great, I've got 7 hours on a Sunday to get through my email inbox. Good. So no, look, it's a really challenging one. In an organisation like ours, there are definitely peaks and troughs. So, I look at the marketing teams when they are getting ready for a show or an event, it is so full on. And I go back to the calibre of our people and the passion they have for their brands. They go above and beyond to deliver for our audiences, our customers every day. I'm still working through that balance, I would say. There are things that I do in my free time that help me sort of manage that stress and get that balance. But I've always worked pretty hard. I recognise in myself, I need a certain level of pressure to get me up in the morning. I'm one of those people that if I have a long deadline, I'm still probably doing it, 48 hours before. So yeah, I'm sort of waffling around your question a little bit. I think, look, it's really hard to achieve balance, particularly in a new role in a year. I think I have boundaries in terms of, okay, I can do this for X amount of time. I know there's a time limit on how fast and how crazy I can go. My holidays are really important to me. I do exercise. My friends and my support network are very important to me, so that I can kind of, while work is absolutely crazy and will continue to be, I've got that sort of the let outs, if you like.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. I'm just going to pick up on one thing you said. It reminded me. There's a guy called Henry Fraser, amazing story. We're going to get him on the show one day.
Yes.
Terribly tragic story, paralysed at the age of 17, turned his life into an absolute masterpiece. But there was one thing he said, because there was a play made about him at the West End, no pressure, no diamonds. And my son has hopped onto that. He's an aspiring golfer, and the pressure putts.
Yeah.
No pressure, no diamonds.
That's such a good phrase. I'm going to have that above my desk. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is true. And I see, one of the other things I look for in a role is it has to be really high pressure. You know, I like the pressure, I like the transformation, but there's also got to be a fun element to it. And that's my kind of, you know, I go to our events and our shows, which give me that boost again. I'm actually going to one in New York end of next week, because if I spend too much time in my office, you know, which is a bit of a cupboard, I get a little bit stir crazy. So I need to be out on the floor. I need to be with customers. And that's where marketing is such a brilliant role. Because if you think about us as marketers, it's kind of expected for you to have an outside interest or an outside role or an outside view. There are some jobs in organizations that are very internally focused. Whereas I think as marketers, we have that opportunity to get out and about, to see a different view. And that's what I think it's always kept me going in marketing as well.
You should get that thing put on.
Yeah, I should. That's such a good idea.
And you know, it's so true, right? It's all about getting closer to the customer. And in fact, my mantra is he or she's close to the customer wins. And that's as simple as that. You know, if you can understand your customers in a better way than your competitors, then you're really in for a treat there. I want to come back to, you know, you talked about the FTSE 100 and you talked about under pressure, certainly is. But yet Informa actually thriving in what is a rather turbulent sort of macro environment.
Yes.
Can you put your finger on why?
Yes. We've talked about this a lot as a business and where we're going and what we're doing. I think post-COVID, there was a bit of a sort of a thread that was buzzing around saying, well, we've gone, you know, post-COVID, people won't want to travel anymore. Yeah. They won't want to come together in person. It's all about digital. Actually, we've seen the opposite. People really want to be together.
True.
And I think, again, macro, when there are macroeconomic pressures, people are looking for new opportunities, for new markets, for new suppliers. And that's what we do. You know, we talk about bringing people together. I was at one of our shows, it's called Supply Side West, out in Las Vegas. It's absolutely vast. And it's down to like the nth degree of ingredients for products. I mean, it's just mind-blowing. And there were literally tens of thousands of people there from all over the world, all looking for, this is what I'm thinking, where do I go, how do I think about it, who are my suppliers? And I think that if you look at what's happening in the world, people are having to think about new markets, new ways of doing things, and that's where we really thrive.
So true.
And also, if you look at, you know, we're a UK listed company, actually a large part of our business is developing in new markets. So Middle East is a really huge growth area for us. US still continues to grow. So it's also about the brands that we've got in existing markets and where else can we take them. So that's something else that we're thinking about. Money 2020 is one of our financial services brands that has traditionally been in Vegas. It then moved to Europe. We're launching in Saudi in a few weeks. So
that's interesting. So you're talking about brand stretch in effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's a great concept. So seeing what's successful somewhere and seeing how you can then expand it into other locations. I'm assuming with the level of localization. I mean, how does that sort of
absolutely
process?
Yeah, so we do exactly that. So you will take the brand, and I mean there are definitely global companies that come in as sponsors, partners, exhibitors, wherever you go. But yes, you would absolutely localize it. We see Money 2020, for example, in Saudi will have many more sort of Middle Eastern attendees, for example, or exhibitors.
Yes.
So yes, it will absolutely be localized, but it's really relevant. Yeah.
We couldn't have this conversation without talking a little bit about Cannes Lion. I'm not going to ask about, are you going to take Cannes Lion to other parts of the world? But I mean, it is because you probably couldn't say, but it is the sort of the pinnacle moment perhaps for the marketing community. As you said, that sense of being together. Yes. Richie and I did our first podcast this year and maybe more to follow, who knows? But to tell us about where Cannes Lion fits into the overall thing. Is it really important in the calendar? How do you see that particular event for the marketing community?
Look, I was so excited when we first started talking about building something with Essential, who obviously the previous owners of Cannes Lion. I remember sitting at the exec timetable literally fizzing because all of our events are amazing, but actually as a marketer, and the sort of the cachet and the brand that Cannes Lion has. Actually, not just Cannes Lion, because if you think about it, it's Walk, it's Most Contagious, all of the other brands around it. As a marketer, I was just like, we've got to do this. So when Cannes Lion came into the Informa family, it's really exciting. It's also from a, we talk about our Informa marketers. They're really excited because, again, it shows that Informa is really serious about marketing as well. And that just from a reputation perspective and a career development perspective, I've got marketers now that can actually go to our own events and learn and develop through our own audiences. I was at Cannes also this year. I just thought it was incredible. I mean, there was such an energy and a buzz there. I think the previous year, there was a bit of a feeling of, AI is coming along, we're all gone, marketing's dead, where are we going? And actually, I felt so much more positive as a marketer coming away from Cannes this year, because there was much more discussion around, yes, there's technology, yes, there's AI, but you still can't lose that kind of human creativity. And consumers can see it. We know this from the data we've got. They're not stupid. They can tell when there's been that sort of human creativity. So I found Cannes Lion this year just completely reinvigorating, actually, as a marketer, with my Informa hat on. So I'm also looking at, how are people queuing? Can they get food? Is it working? But no, I'm really excited about the potential there as well.
Well, I'll tell you what, you're doing a great job. It was the first time I was at Cannes this year, and boy, oh boy, I was taken away. So, it's really exciting, and I'm sure there's lots more to come on that. You already mentioned the use of AI.
Yes.
Right? And you've got such a diversified business from publishing to events. And I can see the core opportunities about that human connection part and why the events areas are absolutely thriving as a consequence. At the same time, talk about brands like Taylor & Francis, for example. And of course, AI is having a massive infiltration across the publishing industry.
Yes.
So how do you see the balance between risk and opportunity when it comes to the world of AI?
I actually see it much more as an opportunity.
Okay.
And partly because of Cannes this year and having I was in quite a few of the sessions around where's AI going and what does it mean, etc. So if you think about our business, so I'll take it really basic. So publishing, you think about the level of content that we have through Taylor & Francis and the various brands. We have Dove Press and Routledge underneath Taylor & Francis. So if you are trying to find relevant content when there are thousands and thousands of pieces of content out there, AI is a brilliant tool for that. So we are, already harnessing AI to make the experience better for people who are just frankly trying to wade through so much content. And then again, from an events perspective, if you are one of our marketers and you are trying to put together an event like Cannes or one of our conferences might need 1,000 speakers. And within that conference, you're also trying to put together a 3-day agenda. So the speakers don't clash. You've got interesting topics. You imagine doing that, and it's been pretty manual. Imagine that with AI now.
Yep.
It's just the potential there to actually free up and enable people to do actually the really value-adding stuff.
Fair.
So I think that's another one. And then if you think about our attendees, so you're coming to, Black Hat, which is our cybersecurity conference in Vegas. There are 25,000, 30,000 people at Black Hat, and you want to make sure that your time is being used really well and that you're meeting the right people. Again, AI is that thing where you put in your needs, your requirements, and boom, you've got an agenda, and it's set up the meetings for you and brought you together. So that's where I'm thinking it's more an opportunity.
You're opening my eyes.
Yeah, well, and but it can be, and then I also sit in meetings where they're like, again, all of content's going to be created by AI. I'm like, yes, to a degree, and we're already doing that. So we launched a brand agent recently where all of our tone of voices for our 850, 1,000 events goes into the brand agent, and then marketers can create content really quickly in the right tone of voice, and we're seeing brilliant results from that. So we're already using it, but I don't think it's the death of marketing and creativity. I think it's actually an enabler. Yeah.
Hey, I hear you.
Accelerant. I'm reflecting on what you said about FTSE 100, exec level, main exec level marketer, as common as hen's teeth, or I heard another expression the other day, hobby horse poo.
Oh.
It's quite good, isn't it?
Share that at my next exec meeting.
Perhaps not as good as No Pressure, No Diamonds. But anyway, forgive me on that. But, so you've climbed up to that. Many marketers, people listening in maybe more junior or maybe on the cusp of that, what for you really defines C-suite readiness for marketers?
Someone once gave me a piece of advice when I was actually thinking about my next move and trying to get a promotion. And they said to me, yes, you need to impress your boss, but you need to have at least 2 supporters around the table. It needs to be a complete no-brainer so that when you're being discussed and you're talking about that promotion, everyone's like, oh yeah, they've been ready for that for 6 months or a year. So that's what I look for in my team, is someone operating at that level already and have been for some time. So there's no risk, frankly, and they've got strong support. I also think about when you're at that table, your role isn't just your function. You're helping to run a company effectively. Yeah. So you have to think outside your own function and think about the wider picture, which, is somewhat cliched, but it's that sort of, you're not just thinking with your own sort of marketing hat on, you're also thinking about the impact. What do you need to think? What does that mean from a P&L perspective? How are you demonstrating value and adding to the strategy of the company overall? And then I think what I also look for, I want the sort of the spotters, if that makes sense. So it's looking out, looking around and looking above, like what's coming down the pipe? What do I need to be thinking about now? And having that ability, I suppose, to sort of step up and out. That's quite a long list.
It's demanding. So,
but it is demanding. Yeah, it is. And I think just, it's, as I say, it's the problem solvers, it's the spotters. Commerciality is key. There's always that discussion about, marketers speaking the language of the CFO. It's really true. You have to be really comfortable with understanding not the ins and outs of the P&L necessarily. I'm not a finance director, but you have to know the questions to ask and you have to spot things that just look a little bit odd.
You've got a killer question.
Killer question.
To show that I'm commercially playing at a different level to what you might assume I'm playing at. Or tip?
The one tip I would say, it's not the killer question, it's probably the killer question not to ask. It's the one you hear most often is like, what's keeping you awake at night? And most CEOs are like, well, nothing really keeps me awake at night. Or, that's not one of my favourite questions. I think that the question that I always look for or that I ask is like, how can I help? Like, how can I help? And that's the one when you're in a meeting or you're dealing with people around the table, that's the one that people just, oh, okay. You're not just thinking about your own world now. And that is a marketing, as I'm, go back to that, as I'm building credibility, when I speak to commercial leads who are chasing down their P&Ls, like my role is here to serve you, frankly. That's what I'm here to do.
Jill, I love the unlock for me in what you've just said was around the thought of having champions beyond just your direct line manager. My God, that is so critically important. And it's like, as you described it, you almost said, well, the decision becomes a no-brainer because you've got the support of advocacy of the wider decision makers who all have influence in deciding. And for me, that's so critically important to a career at any stage of people's careers. And I wonder if you've got any advice as to how you create and form those champions in and around the business. How do you navigate that? So people who are going through that similarly across any stage of their career, how do they get and create champions for themselves?
I think this is something that American Express was always really good at, and I think it probably still is. It was really I think it was a core part of being a leader or a manager at American Express to spend time with people across the business. But what it also meant is that people like me who were coming up through the business spent time developing their network and just spending time with people. Number one, just letting people know who you are and what your interests are, but actually just building a network and letting people know what your interests are, what you're up to, where you want to go next. So I always say to people, you have got to build your network and actually spend focused
internal
time
network,
on it.
External network.
I think it's both. I think it's both. I think there is definitely an internal. If you've got a view of wanting to build and develop your career internally, then you need to have that network internally. And most people, I get this where people just like, do you have half an hour just for coffee? Want to hear more about your area? Tell you a little bit about me. Most people are really open to do that. So I think don't be afraid of building your own internal network. I also say to people, just be really vocal about what you want. So the worst meetings that I have is when people want to have time with me and they sort of show up and don't have any questions, don't have any thoughts, don't have their story straight. So I think network like crazy internally. Keep a view outside the organisation as well. And, that's not just about going to conferences or events. There's lots of free things out there. There's lots of, opportunities to gather, to grow relationships. And then, yes, signal what you actually want in the future. The dream job may not be there, but at least when people are having those discussions, your name will be in the frame because you already expressed what you might want to do. Yeah. So I think networking, I've always had sponsors and mentors along the way as well.
How do you find the right mentor? How does that work?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I've had good internal mentors who are just helping me navigate an organisation or a particular challenge in an organisation. And again, that's about having a good network. I normally sort of almost like interview a mentor without them, they may not know it. But, it's sort of like, it's any
one of Jill's mentors, here you go.
Yeah,
She's interviewing you.
But I do think, people sometimes come to me and say, I really want a mentor. And I'm like, why? What are you looking for? How do you want to structure it? And unless you've really thought about that, you shouldn't be seeking a mentor. So I think you need to think about what you want to get out of it. I also think you shouldn't be afraid of saying, actually, now we've had our initial conversation, this isn't the right relationship for me. I think we might need to think about things differently. Yeah, and I think you have to. And then also, you can time bound it. So you can say, I need a mentor because I'm looking for my next job opportunity. Can we just spend 6 months with a very focused outcome?
Yes.
So I think that's how you go about it. And then externally, again, if you've got an external network, you've got a network of people to ask and to seek. And there are really good organisations that can help you. I mean, I've been really, again, lucky along the way. I've done programs with the Marketing Society. I've got a good network through ISBA. There are great organisations out there that can help.
You use the word lucky a lot. I might challenge you on that subsequently. But anyway, you talked about resilience. You've talked about service. I watched a little Simon Sinek video yesterday, and he talked about what makes a good Navy SEAL, who gets through the process. Ooh. And it's not the strongest, it's not the fittest, it's not the so on. So there's two things. One is when everything is desperate, you just keep going, resilience. And he also said, helping the person next to you.
Yes.
Being of service. So my question isn't, have you ever thought about the Navy SEALs? It's more...
Next career move.
Yeah, exactly. It's more that thought about service. How does that translate into your leadership style, being of service to the people that you're leading? So down.
It's something that's really important to me. I mean, we can get into diversity and inclusion and my thoughts on that at some point. Yeah. But I really believe that one of your responsibilities as a leader is to bring people with you and to bring people up with you as well. So we had to ask my team actually on the side if this is actually true, you can test them. But I spend a lot of time with people just like that checking. So, my one-to-ones. Yes, you can go through a list of projects, but the first point is like, how are you? And that can get you some quite different answers or responses just to going through, here's a list of projects, here's a list of deliverables, where are you? So my natural bias is towards people. I get a lot of my energy from people. I mean, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about, being on the floor at our events, meeting our customers, spending time with my own team. So that's a lot of my energy comes from that. But there's also a bit around, we've all worked for people who are great and not great. I think you actually learn more from the not greats because it teaches you the sort of leader you do or don't want to be. So I think how are you, how can I be of service, how can I help are really core to who I am actually.
Yeah. On that note, and sort of one eye to the future, marketing as a discipline is going through a fundamental shift, not necessarily in the fundamental concepts of how marketing is done, but certainly at a tactical level, the way that tools, techniques, and certainly the role of AI is playing in our marketing mix, and whether we're marketing to humans or AI bots now is another. Yeah. And as the mix changes. So what's your perspective on some of the core marketing trends that somebody needs to be mindful of when they're sort of thinking about honing in their new skill sets to be a better marketer?
I mean, I think some of the trends are still linked in the sort of the fundamental truths that have always been there. So, customer experience. I think there's more pressure on that because there is more pressure on people spending their time, frankly, and their money and their energy in the right places. So I think you will continue to see pressure on how we deliver experiences and the interaction between people and companies. I think the other piece that I see this with my kids, right? My kids are 13 and 16, and they are much more aware of ethics and corporate social responsibility than before. So I think marketing and brands have to continue to really be vocal about that and having that sort of strong core of being a responsible company at the other side of it. And I think technology, this is where I try and spend probably not enough time, but again, going outside and thinking around, like we've talked already about AI, but some of the technologies and the tools are out there are incredible. And how do you keep ahead of those or in front of those? And that's where I start turning to really smart people in my team or with some of our partners, because, trying to keep up is challenging, right? But I would say anyone who isn't embracing not just AI, but the future of technology is missing a trick. And then data, I think data at the heart of it. And this goes back into the commerciality of marketing. I see data as being absolutely critical. I still think there's something about the best marketers just sometimes have a good gut feel and that creativity coming through. But it's grounded in the data. So I think data, technology, and customer experience are the three that I think people just really need to hone in on even further.
I totally agree with that. I mean, when I reflect on some of your brands, when I think about your events, I suspect another core area that's been important, there we go, is around the world of SEO.
Yes.
And even things like sort of paid media. Because clearly how, marketing, advertising for those core events. And I think we're going through quite the shift when it comes to those type of disciplines.
Oh, yes.
I mean, is that sort of front of mind at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of smiling because I think I've been in 5 meetings this week alone about discoverability. Yeah, and it's only Thursday. So,
I mean, it's probably the biggest topic on the marketer's lips at the moment.
Yeah, it's absolutely huge. And there's a question for me around, again, we are not lacking in content as an organisation in all of its formats. Yep. But is it great content? So, because of course you want your content to be discovered and how that happens, and everyone's talking about, it's just going to be from bot to bot or agent to agent. But actually, for me, there's a fundamental around how are you creating brilliant content that still gets picked up.
Exactly.
And I don't have all of the answers, but again, there are so many conversations we're having at the moment around how do we just make this happen? What does it mean? And we've got such a variety of products and services, and our content it's event content, it's publishing content, it's video content, it's creative content. I mean, I haven't solved that yet. But no, it's absolutely huge. That is one area that is now, probably wasn't a priority 6 months ago. And all of a sudden it's like all we're talking about.
You know what? It's strange. Right? I sort of read a stat that basically said that almost 25% of all your traffic is effectively bad bots. Yes. And so the discoverability piece is absolutely critical to this whole notion of really understanding how your traffic is, what's your traffic.
Yep.
And that's partially content, but that's also really tech that sits underlying the platforms.
Yes. Well, and this goes back to that piece around the profile of marketers now. So, I have someone in my team who is marketing technology and transformation. Now, he interacts with our technology teams. He's not the person that is building the tech, but he is the person that's thinking, hold on a minute, from a marketing perspective, these are the tools and capabilities that we need to deliver. Tech team, help me get in there and do that. Yeah.
So fundamental.
Yeah.
God.
You're absolutely right. That this has become the topic du jour. Interestingly, I think some CMOs are sort of a bit worried to out it because, what have you been... What we've been doing all this time. And in fairness, at Direct Line, we thought we were great at performance marketing, but we had no idea about this invalid traffic thing. Just goes to show how the landscape's changing so fast. I'm conscious to come back to inclusivity because you sort of said we should talk about it, and we absolutely should.
Yes.
What's your take? I mean, the reality is there's been a bit of a rollback in the world.
Yeah.
So you're clearly passionate. Just tell us your perspective.
I think it's something I've always been really passionate about, and I sort of go through waves of frustration and hope about it. And you're right, because sometimes I read the stats and think, God, but we are absolutely going backwards. And I was looking on the tube this morning, and I'm like, where are the women of my age? I mean, honestly, it's a real thing. And then it's not just women of my age, but where are all, with the nicest women in the world? Like, if you look around some of the senior tables, where are the non-white men in their 50s, frankly? And we've still got a huge amount of work to do. And there are this is a whole hour in itself, but it does really concern me. And I think about it from a really commercial perspective as well, because if you don't have that representation around the table or the voices around the table, who's making the decisions? Who's doing the product development? Who's thinking about, what your audiences and your customers actually need? And I worked in energy companies, and that becomes really clear in energy companies when you're starting to talk about the price of energy and the impact that has on families and, consumer debt. If you've got people around the table that have never had to worry about paying a bill or feeding their family, how does that translate into your service approach, your care? So for me, it's not just about giving people rewarding, interesting careers. There is a hard commercial rationale for having a more diverse set of people around the table who can give a different voice and actually really represent your customer, particularly in a mass market brand.
God, it's so true and so resonant. And particularly as I imagine an organization like Informa, which has its tentacles in all parts of the globe.
Yes.
I mean, at the end of the day, you talked about sort of your growth countries and the like, and therefore even more critically important.
Very much so.
To have it represented. And by the way, I resonate a lot with this. Don't get me on my soapbox. But when you talk about this thought of diverse boardrooms, or lack thereof, why is that? Underlying it, what's the deal here? Why?
Oh, it's a really, God, if I could solve that question,
right?
It'd be multi-million. I think it's a whole variety of factors. I mean, this is why I don't think there's one approach. One of the reasons I'm attracted to Informa is because actually we have a really diverse board and some really high caliber people across our board. I think there's a certain bit around role modelling. So I know this because people look at my role. So I'm in a position where my husband is at home as the core carer. He's a freelance writer, but he's there. I travel a lot. So I know that there are people in our organisation that look at me and think, I could never do that role. I could never reach that level because of what that role entails. So I think that's part of it. Are there role models that look like you, that are doing the type of job? Could you just do it? I think that's part of it. So I think there's something around how do we have role models that have come from your background, that look like you, that sound like you, that are you doing the jobs. I think that's one thing. But I think it goes all the way back to the hiring process. So, what does your candidate slate look like? What's your interview process? It's a really, even down to one of the things I did many years ago was in job specs, take off like MBA required, the sort of university expected to be blah, 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 15 years experience. Because if you think about that, you're just knocking candidates out from the word go.
Yeah.
And just work with organisations. There are some amazing organisations out there that can help you hire from different backgrounds. And that's, I haven't started this yet at Informa, but it's on my list. Okay. It's just about, from the very beginning, how are you hiring differently to develop that pipeline of opportunity coming through the organisation.
And just to add to the point, and maybe you touched on that last sentence there, as they go through going through the organisation, what I tend to see is that when it comes to that sort of middle management part, maybe when someone's 10 to 15 years into their careers, they've got a bit of experience under their belts, it feels to be a bit of a dramatic drop-off at that moment as well. I think there may be a few points at which, critical moments, and I do see that at that point there, where a lot of people of diverse backgrounds in all shapes and sizes and forms tend to then kind of go, actually, this ain't for me. I need to go do something else. Yeah. And that's a consequence of the experiences they've had over the years, probably being a bit worn down by the process. And I guess what I'm trying to think about is, how do you champion people at that point? Because if they drop off then, you're gone. It's finished. Yeah, and all the great hiring stuff that you've done before doesn't save you at 10 years later. And therefore, I don't know, I'm conceptualizing a thought about the middle part too being a big bottleneck. Yeah. And one to solve for. Yeah,
and I think, again, I don't think there's one answer to this. I think this is where we talked about, mentorship, being a mentor and a sponsor is really important. So how are you giving those people a voice? I think there is still a cultural shift that we need to make around, being in the office from 9 till 5 doesn't deliver, that's not the value. for me, it's about output.
Of course.
So we are, largely back to the office, we're at events, but actually I just want people to really do good work. You don't need to be in the office from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. So I think there's a certain level of flexibility that we still need culturally to put in. And then I think it's around, how do we just work differently in the future, and what are the support mechanisms that we can put in? So I feel like I'm waffling on this one because I think it's a multi-stream answer.
It is.
I think we just need to really rethink the profile of the people that we want around the table and enabling those profiles and giving them the support network, frankly, to get there.
Well, the fact that you're thinking about it constructively and then thinking about the solutions is a really positive sort of process. And then that's what we're going to get to a better outcome as a consequence. I'm glad that
and I think
fun to your
generationally
mind.
as well, this is where I see, I think if you look at, people are like, Gen Z, they're always, they're not as loyal. I mean, they work so hard coming through. And I think they are also going to push us to do things differently.
And by the way, not just work hard, we've put them into a very uncertain environment.
It's
Come
really
on,
tough.
Right? It's just crazy.
I was very lucky. I was involved in the recruitment process for our grad trainees. And we take a low number of excellent grad trainees, but I mean, literally thousands of applications. I think it's, at least when I left uni, I kind of knew I'd get a job. Whether it was a grad trainee role, there was a job for me. I see that generation of kids working so hard, having to have the most incredible CVs, and there's no certainty at the end of it.
That's it.
And they've got a ton of debt. So I think they've got it actually incredibly hard.
Jill, it's been an amazing conversation. We've talked about some super important topics: resilience, service, inclusivity. So time has kind of come to the end, but for one question. And you maybe edged into it in just what you said there. You talked about luck a few times. And a lot of guests talk about luck. And to Richie and I, it's like, well, doesn't look like luck to us. But you then said for younger people, this is what you can do to so on and so forth. I mean, I suppose what are the conditions for creating luck?
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one to pull me up on because it's really funny. I did an amazing course with an organisation called The Pipeline, which is called Top Flight, and it's about executive development for senior women. And I got pulled up on my luck because they're like, it's not just luck, stop it. Because I have had a bit of a plan, going through it. Not a plan in terms of this is the list of companies I want to work for and the jobs I want to do. But to your point, it's around, I'm generally quite clear about the things I don't want to do. Yeah. Or the elements of a role that will be really good for me or that I feel I could really thrive in. So I think that's the element of planning that I've had throughout my career around this is the type of thing I'm interested in. This is where I think I'll succeed and what I can offer. This is the thing I definitely don't want to do, and being quite clear about that as well, and having the bravery to actually turn things down along the way and to do sideways moves and to expand that way. So I still go back to the best jobs I've had have generally come through a network or, someone thinking of me because they know someone who's recommended me. So I think having that strong sponsor, strong network, and being able to articulate what you want are probably the things that really help to create that environment.
Makes complete sense. And fabulous conversation. Fabulous to have you on the show.
Pleasure.
Thank you for giving us your time and energy. You're an optimistic change agent, I think is mine in a nutshell.
Try to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Loved it.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
Brilliant having you on.